Hey, what's happening, friends? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today we're going to be checking out the Synido Tempo Pad MIDI controller. I'm going to be attempting to connect it up with some hardware, with some Euro rack, and also the iPad. Come on, let's check it out. It's really easy to use the included software with the Tempo Pad to get it to send out whatever MIDI notes and whatever MIDI channel you might need it to send out on the three individual banks that we have. Here I've set up this bank to send out the notes in an F minor pentatonic scale, and I'm sending them out on MIDI channel 14, which is the syntax auto receive channel. So any of the 12 available parts in the syntax that I choose, I can play melodically using the Tempo Pad. This is a pretty neat way to play the parts in the syntax. Let's take a listen to what it sounds like. I think my favorite thing about the Tempo Pad has got to be the compatibility. If I want to use it with an iPad or with a computer, for example, we've got USB-C MIDI. And if I want to use it with, let's say, any piece of hardware in my studio, we've got standard 5-pin MIDI. Here, I'm using it to jam and help sketch out some ideas on an iPad using Beatmaker 3. Let's take a listen. Let's take a really quick overview of the Synido Tempo Pad. What we've got here is we've got a MIDI controller that looks like a 16-pad MIDI controller, but we actually have 3 banks of 16 pads. And we can go back and forth between those banks using the Pad Bank button over here. All we have to do is just click this down, and you can see it's changing color here. So we've got a bank there, a different bank here, and a different bank here. Now, why is that important? And I'm going to keep stressing this throughout this video, is that it's really easy to use the included app that comes with the pad to customize what notes and MIDI channels you are sending out on any of these 3 different pad banks. We also have more than these 4 knobs as well. we actually have 3 sets of 4 knobs. We have a knob bank 1, a knob bank 2, and the knob bank 3, the same way we had 3 pad banks. So depending on, which color is lit up here, you're going to be sending out 4 different complete sets of information on those knobs. We can also change the mode of the pad itself. If we want the pads to always be lit up, we just hold down the mode button. And if we, change the pad bank, it's probably pretty bright there on the camera. But if we change the pad bank, it changes the color of those pads accordingly. So the difference here in these modes is that when it's off, the pads will light up when I press down on the pad. And if I just change the mode, it's inverting it basically. So it's, going to turn the pads off and the LEDs off when I press the pads down. That's just a personal preference. Currently, in its default mode, it's just going to send out whatever notes you've got set up using the app. But if you want to just play it chromatically, just with C, C sharp, D, D sharp, all we need to do is tap the mode button, and then it's doing just that. Now we're playing chromatically, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, etc., going up the scale to the next C. We've got a blank pad here, and then pad 15 and pad 16 are going to be used to go octave down or an octave up. But if you don't want to use it in just a chromatic way and you want to use whatever notes you've assigned to it, we're just going to go ahead and stay in the standard, mode here. We can adjust the velocity settings to 4 different settings as well. I'm most fond of playing it in the white mode, which is a fixed velocity. All pads are just sending out the same velocity, so it's not really trying to send out velocity-sensitive information. That's just my personal preference. But you've also got 3 different levels here of velocity that you can assign it to if you're used to playing the pads maybe softer or maybe a little bit harder. Down at the bottom, we've got some transport controls that you can assign. If you're using like this with a DAW, say like Ableton or something, it's really easy to just, assign these to the transport controls in Ableton and you're good to go. One last thing that I want to note about the pad is the connectivity here at the top. Not only do we have, a USB-C jack for power, but we have 2 USB jacks, so we can power the pad and still send USB Midi out to like an iPhone or an iPad or something that doesn't provide a lot of power, because we can power the pad separately on our own. And lastly, we've got that 5-pin Midi out jack, which I think is just so important in this pad, making it compatible with literally just about everything. you've been enjoying my content, I'd like to ask for your help in supporting the channel by clicking that little like button under this video right here. It helps feed the YouTube algorithms so that they'll share my content with more people who might enjoy this type of synthy content. Thanks for the support, friends. I can't stress enough just how awesome it is that the tempo pad has 5-pin Midi output, because what this means is that it is literally compatible with just about anything. Here, I'm using it to control a tiny little Euro rack setup. I've got the 5-pin Midi coming out of the tempo pad, and I'm feeding that into the Erica Synth's black Midi to CV converter, which converts the Midi information into pitch and gate information that Euro rack can easily understand. I'm controlling the plucked string module from Mosaic 1U, and I'm running that into their variable delay and into their mono reverb to add a little bit more effect to the sound as well. I'm using the 1010 Blue Box mixer and recorder to record this example. I've been using this to record all of the examples for this video, in fact. And I'm using the Blue Box mixer to add even a little bit more reverb to this example. I've used the Tempo Pad's editing app again to convert the MIDI output into a Japanese scale this time. I can't stress enough just how easy that is to do. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what this sounds like. Something else I wanted to show is how I've been using Beatmaker 3 on the iPad to help set up my scale modes inside of the tempo pad here. Now you may notice that it looks pretty similar here. We've got that 16 pad layout, right? Well, one of the neat things about Beatmaker 3 is that it's really easy to put it into a scales mode. It's got all these scales built in, like the major pentatonic scale, minor pentatonic, major blues, minor blues, natural minor, etc., etc. Even that Japanese scale that I was just playing. So for instance, if I put Beatmaker 3 into a scale mode, it puts the note names right there on the screen. Here we are, C3, C sharp 3, F3, G3, and all I'm doing is I'm using the included Synido tempo pad app to just mimic these note numbers, or note names rather. You know, I would go into the app and put C3, C sharp 3, F3, G3, etc., etc. If you want maybe to set up like a F minor pentatonic scale and not be with a root note of C, all we would need to do to set that up would be to choose minor pentatonic. I can go from octave or semitone over here, and I can just scroll down until our root note in the bottom left corner is an F. Here we are in an F minor pentatonic scale, and if I were just to duplicate the note names here, using the Tempo Pads app, I'm good to go, and I'll be playing in an F minor pentatonic scale. So that's how I'm implementing my own, scale mode inside of the Tempo Pad, just doing it manually. I can't stress this enough. Say we want to do a D minor scale, we can choose like natural minor, right? And we can put our root note down to a D, and here's the note names, D2, E2, F2, G2, and I would just open the app and I would just pick one of the, pad banks here, and I would, assign these note names to the tempo pad, and we're good to go. I'd like to show you that we can control multiple different synthesizers at the same time using the tempo pad. So in this example, I've got a chilled lo-fi beat programmed out in the poly-in tracker, and I'm jamming over it with the tempo pad using 3 different synthesizers. Now in pad bank 1 on the tempo pad, I'm sending Midi out on Midi channel 1 to the Waldorf Blofeld. On pad bank 2, I'm sending Midi out on Midi channel 2 to the Dreadbox Typhon, and on pad bank 3, I'm sending Midi out on channel 3 over to the Audio Thingies Micro Monster. Let's take a listen to what this sounds like. Now, in the cons section, I do note that these knobs here send stepped values. And what exactly does that mean? You might expect these knobs to be like perfectly smooth feeling, but actually these are the kind of knobs that have those little indentations on them. And what does that mean when you're sending MIDI CC data to something like, let's say, Beatmaker 3 here on the iPad? I want you to focus really close, if we can here, down to this number here. I've got this particular knob here, this macro knob, assigned to the attack of this ADSR envelope inside of Beatmaker 3. And let's take a quick look at this number here. Right now it's reading 337 milliseconds. And if I turn this knob, it just sort of goes to the next indent, and it jumps quite a lot of milliseconds in doing so. We go from, let's say, 368 milliseconds to the next indent, 384, 401. So we're jumping about 20 milliseconds each time I move the knob. It's not necessarily a perfectly smooth signal that we're sending out. You can really sort of feel those indentations and those sort of like stopping points along the way. For example, a typical knob that doesn't have these indents here is going to send out the range from like 0 to 127. So we're going to have 127 you know, stopping points along the way, per se. But this sending a little bit more information gives us a little bit less resolution in this MIDI information overall. I hope that makes sense. It's not like a total, you know, deal breaker. You can definitely still use these for automation. You can see I'm automating. I mean, you know, moving these knobs just fine. It's just that when you are moving something like a filter per se, where you want to hear maybe like a really buttery smooth transition and not those sort of little stepped values that we're kind of going to get when you're using these particular knobs.